I never asked for recognition. I never wanted a medal pinned to my chest or my name shouted across a parade ground. I wanted precision. I wanted control. I wanted my actions to speak louder than the system that had erased me, ignored me, and written me off as irrelevant. And yet, as I stood in that crowded hall, the hum of chatter and the subtle shuffle of polished boots around me, I felt a strange flutter of disbelief. A SEAL commander, a man whose presence alone could silence a room, had just saluted me. Publicly. For me. For all the missions I'd completed alone. For all the times I'd been invisible while others claimed the glory. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I had spent years off the record, working quietly, legally invisible, yet morally accountable in every mission I took. The military bureaucracy had decided early on that women like me were disruptive, not fit for deployment, or simply not worth tracking. I had no rank, no record, no accolades, just the rifle I could handle better than anyone I knew. When I had joined, I was told in a hushed tone that a woman would never lead a sniper team, never be trusted with life and death decisions. I had smiled politely and nodded. Then I had learned to shoot in ways they hadn't imagined. I remember the night it all started to fall apart. I was deployed in a conflict zone, the kind where the dust never settles and the air tastes faintly of burnt metal. My team was compromised. I took positions I wasn't assigned to, eliminated a target that everyone else deemed untouchable, and saved lives. Lives that, without me, would have been lost. The commendation should have followed. The system, however, decided that the woman who acted independently was dangerous, and they expunged every trace of my involvement. My name was scrubbed, my achievements buried under layers of paperwork that no one outside of the chain of command would ever see. I returned home, carrying medals I had never been awarded in my heart, memories etched like bullets into my mind. For years I stayed quiet. I kept my distance from formal recognition. I trained civilians, taught tactical shooting classes to law enforcement, and consulted on private security operations, but always under the radar. There was a peculiar comfort in being invisible, in knowing that my actions mattered even if no one would ever clap for them. And yet, the world has a funny way of catching up. People who had heard the whispers of a woman capable of impossible feats started seeking me out. Veterans who had fought beside me, legal experts who had combed military archives, even retired SEALs who had once doubted my existence. They started nudging me back toward a spotlight I hadn't asked for. I arrived at the hall with a sense of apprehension. It was a charity event, a gathering for veterans and military supporters. Names and ranks floated in the room like confetti, and I had none. I wore civilian clothes, simple and unremarkable. I could have faded into the crowd, and in many ways I wanted to, but I hadn't spent years being erased to remain invisible forever. There was a timing to these things, a quiet inevitability. You don't force recognition, you let it find you. I spotted him before he saw me. Commander Thompson, a man whose reputation alone could intimidate seasoned officers. He had led teams I could only dream of joining in uniform, had taken operations no one dared speak about in public. And yet, his eyes scanned the room until they landed on me. A pause, a subtle nod. Then, the tilt of his head as if to say, "You belong here." I walked toward the front, guided by an almost imperceptible force of inevitability. Whispers trailed me. Who is she? I've never seen her before. That's the woman? I ignored them. I had learned long ago that attention was a double-edged sword. Wield it carefully, and it becomes a shield. Mishandle it, and it becomes a blade. As the formalities of the evening concluded, the commander called for attention. His voice was calm, deliberate, commanding, and then he said my name. Not loudly, not flamboyantly, just enough that the room realized this was no ordinary announcement. My name was spoken in the same breath as men with medals, men with histories recorded in glossy books and military archives. My chest tightened. I forced my expression into neutrality, though inside, the years of erasure surged like a storm tide. "You may not have a rank," he said, his voice low, deliberate, "and you may not have a name in the books, but your service is undeniable. Your courage, your precision, your moral clarity in impossible circumstances, it deserves recognition." The room was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that waits for something monumental to unfold. Then he saluted me. A full, formal salute. Public, unmistakable, impossible to ignore. And I returned it, not because it was required, but because it was right. Because it was the truth. Because it finally validated every day I had lived in shadows while others claimed the sun. I thought back to the moments when I had been dismissed. The commanding officer who called me reckless for taking initiative. The colleague who tried to sabotage my position in the field. The legal team that buried my mission reports. Each of them, in that instant, faded into insignificance. The commander's salute was louder than their words, heavier than their doubts, and more enduring than any bureaucratic punishment. Afterwards, people came forward, veterans who had fought beside me, now older, wiser, with a glint of admiration in their eyes. "I knew it," one said softly, almost reverently. "We all knew what you did. Finally, the world can see it." Their recognition was humbling, but it wasn't what I craved. I wanted the truth acknowledged, not the applause. I wanted my reality restored, not a veneer of popularity. Later that evening, an older veteran approached me. His uniform was faded, his medals dulled with age, but his eyes were sharp. "You did what the system couldn't," he said quietly, "and yet you did it without losing yourself. That's rarer than any medal." I nodded, feeling the weight of years lift, just a little. In that moment, I realized that my invisibility had been my crucible. It had tested me, sharpened me, and prepared me for this recognition. Not by the world, but by those who truly understood. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent so long hiding in plain sight, thinking that my anonymity protected me, thinking that without a rank or a name, I could avoid scrutiny. But anonymity had its own power. It allowed me to act with clarity, to make decisions that were morally unambiguous, to save lives without hesitation. It was only now, in this rare intersection of visibility and acknowledgement, that the system's silence felt like an ally rather than a barrier. People often ask if I felt vindictive standing there, receiving the commander's salute. The answer is no. Not vindictive, just relieved. Triumphant, yes, but not in the way they imagine. Triumph isn't about revenge. Triumph is when the truth, no matter how long delayed, is finally recognized. And this was it. Every suppressed report, every erased operation, every whispered doubt about my abilities, they converged in that single salute. There was humor, too, in the subtle absurdity of it all. Here I was, a civilian, without rank, without official recognition, and yet I commanded the attention of a room full of decorated military personnel. It was almost comical, in a dark sort of way, that the very system that had sought to erase me had orchestrated the stage for my public vindication. Life has a sense of irony sharper than any rifle sight, and yet the story wasn't over. The recognition came with responsibility. I realized, standing there with the commander's salute still resonating in my mind, that my actions could inspire others. Women who had been dismissed, overlooked, underestimated, they would see that even the system's indifference could not erase competence, courage, and moral clarity. My anonymity had protected me. My visibility now had the power to challenge assumptions, to redefine what was possible. Later, as I walked out into the cool evening air, I felt the weight of that moment settle around me. The lights of the city reflected off the pavement, fragmented like 1,000 tiny mirrors. Each one seemed to whisper, "You were seen. You were heard. You are not forgotten." I thought of the missions, the quiet nights in distant lands, the long hours alone with nothing but the wind and the rifle. Each had led me here to a public acknowledgement I had never sought, but somehow deserved. The commander's salute remained with me, not as a symbol of power wielded over me, but as a gesture of respect earned and freely given. It was a reversal, yes, but a fair one. The system could no longer claim authority over my story. I had acted with integrity when no one was watching. I had succeeded without recognition. And now, recognition had come, not as a gift, but as a truth that could no longer be denied. In the end, I smiled at the irony, at the poetic justice of it all. I was still civilian, still technically invisible, still without a formal place in the archives. And yet, at that moment, I held something far more enduring than any medal, the acknowledgement of a SEAL commander, witnessed by those who mattered, that my life, my choices, my courage, had finally been seen. I had no rank, no name in the books, and yet, for the first time, I felt the full weight of respect, earned and undeniable, settle over me. And it was magnificent.